Jack Elam. You won't believe this. One of Hollywood's most recognizable faces, Jack Elam, spent decades playing the bad guy everyone loved to hate. But behind the scenes, he carried a grudge so deep it shaped the way he talked about one of the biggest stars in movie history. And the shocking part? That star was none other than Gary Cooper. Jack Elam was born William Scott Elam on November 13, 1920, in the small mining town of Miami, Arizona. From a young age, he was drawn to stories and performance traits that later became the backbone of his acting career. After serving in the U.S. Navy during World War II, Elam sharpened his discipline, then pursued acting at the University of Southern California. But what truly set him apart wasn't his training, it was his striking face. With that distinctive lazy eye and rugged features, Elam looked like he had walked straight out of a dusty Western saloon. Most actors might have seen that as a curse. Elam? He turned it into his greatest weapon. Throughout the 1,950 seconds, 60 seconds, and beyond, he built an incredible career, over 200 roles, 5 decades of television and film. If you've ever seen Once Upon a Time in the West, Support Your Local Sheriff, or The Night of the Grizzly, you know exactly what I mean. He could make you laugh, make you shiver, sometimes both in the same scene. He became the go-to outlaw, the eccentric sidekick, or the unpredictable drifter who stole the show. But Elam wasn't just a Western guy. He popped up everywhere: comedies, dramas, even family sitcoms. On television, he showed up in Gunsmoke Bonanza, The Twilight Zone, and The Lone Ranger. Later, he brought heart to comedies like The Texas Wheelers, where he played a gruff father, suddenly raising kids he barely knew. That little show only lasted 8 episodes, but it paired Elam with a young Mark Hamill right before he became Luke Skywalker. Not bad timing. And then came the oddball stuff. Only Jack Elam could play Frankenstein's monster in a sitcom, Struck by Lightning, or an unhinged proctologist named Dr. Van Helsing in The Cannonball Run. He even reprised that insane role in the sequel. Every time, he made you remember him, no matter how small the part. Elam's unique energy also showed up in real life. While filming The Aurora Encounter in 1986, he befriended Mickey Hayes, a young boy living with the rare condition progeria. Their bond became so strong it was later featured in a documentary. That relationship revealed the soft side of a man so often cast as the villain. Now, here's where it gets interesting. For all his fun, offbeat roles and lasting friendships, there was one Hollywood legend Jack Elam never had time for: Gary Cooper. To the public, Cooper was an American icon, the strong, silent cowboy with the chiseled jawline, a man who won an Oscar for High Noon and carried an air of quiet dignity. But to Elam, he was overrated, lazy, and downright frustrating. Elam once joked that Cooper's so-called acting style was nothing more than standing around and mumbling while the character actors did the heavy lifting. To him, Cooper's natural charm was just coasting. You could have put a cigar store Indian in that role and gotten the same performance. Elam scoffed about Cooper's Oscar-winning turn in High Noon. What really rubbed Elam the wrong way was Cooper's work ethic, or in his view, the lack of it. Elam was the kind of actor who sweated every detail, showed up early, stayed late, and poured himself into even the smallest parts. Meanwhile, he said, Cooper floated by on his star power, content to look good in a cowboy hat and cash the paycheck. And then there was Cooper's attitude on set. While many remembered him as polite and gentlemanly, Elam thought differently. Unless you were a studio boss or a glamorous actress, Cooper barely acknowledged you. For a man like Elam, who treated everyone on set with the same respect, that kind of aloofness was unforgivable. The more critics praised Cooper, the more irritated Elam became. To him, the Hollywood system worshipped leading men for their looks, while ignoring the gritty character actors who brought depth and color to every movie. Elam once summed it up by saying, "Gary Cooper was like wallpaper. He filled the space, but you didn't notice him unless someone told you to." Still, Elam knew the truth. Audiences wanted that tall, stoic hero, and Cooper delivered what people craved. But Elam never stopped reminding anyone who'd listen that the real soul of Hollywood was in the faces like his, the ones who weren't afraid to be ugly, wild, or unforgettable. Beyond all the grumbling, Elam's own career speaks louder. He kept working right into the 1,990 seconds, even popping up in Home Improvement with Ernest Borgnine. His unpredictable, eccentric charm never left him. And in 1994, he finally got the recognition he deserved when he was inducted into the Hall of Great Western Performers. A fitting honor for a man who, despite never being the polished leading man, left his fingerprints all over the Western genre. Away from the spotlight, Elam's personal life was marked by both heartbreak and devotion. He married twice, first to Jean-Louise Hodgert, who passed away from cancer in 1961, and later to Margaret Jennison, with whom he spent more than 4 decades until his own death in 2003 at the age of 82. When fans remember Jack Elam, they see the crooked eye, the grizzled grin, and the unforgettable presence that could make any scene come alive. He was a villain you couldn't forget, a comic wildcard you couldn't ignore, and a man who never held back when it came to saying exactly what he thought, even if that meant tearing down someone as untouchable as Gary Cooper. So, what do you think? Was Jack Elam right about Gary Cooper? Or was his feud more about frustration with a system that never gave character actors their due? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what side you're on. And if you enjoyed this trip back through Hollywood's Wild West of personalities, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around for more stories you won't hear anywhere else. Jack Elam. You won't believe this. One of Hollywood's most recognizable faces, Jack Elam, spent decades playing the bad guy everyone loved to hate. But behind the scenes, he carried a grudge so deep it shaped the way he talked about one of the biggest stars in movie history. And the shocking part? That star was none other than Gary Cooper. Jack Elam was born William Scott Elam on November 13, 1920, in the small mining town of Miami, Arizona. From a young age, he was drawn to stories and performance traits that later became the backbone of his acting career. After serving in the U.S.,